All right, today we're jumping into a really unique and complex case study. We're looking at one person's claim that they've fulfilled a biblical prophecy, one that's almost 2,000 years old. Now, we're not here to pass judgment one way or the other. Our goal is just to understand the argument itself, how it's built, and what's being presented as evidence.
So, this really brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. I mean, how on earth does a person even begin to prove that they've fulfilled an ancient spiritual prophecy? Our job here isn't to validate or debunk anything, but to really look at what is being offered up as proof.
And this is it. This is the verse right at the heart of everything, Revelation 2:17. And you've got to notice, it promises two very specific things to the person who conquers. You've got the hidden manna, and you've got this white stone with a new name. The entire argument we're about to see is built on providing evidence for both of these. So here's the key, at least according to the author's own interpretation. These two things aren't just separate items on a checklist. They are two inseparable signs that have to be presented together. You can't have one without the other. They're like two sides of the same coin. This two-part structure is the foundation for everything we're about to unpack.
Okay, so let's start breaking down how this argument is built, piece by piece, starting with that first required sign, the new name. The author argues that this name can't just be something you make up. It has to be divinely given, and this is critical, it has to be validated somehow in the real physical world. And here it is. This is the full name the author claims was given to him. I mean, just looking at it, its length and its structure are pretty striking, right? According to the claim, every single part of this name has a specific, revealed meaning. Now, when you see it broken down like this, you can see how the author presents it as more than just a name. It's almost like a sentence, a divine testimony. You have Engai and Ruach representing the divine, kind of bookending his birth name, Zachary David Enfield, which itself is given this new symbolic meaning. And then, of course, it all concludes with Jesus Christ. Okay, now this is what the author points to as the crucial piece of outside validation. The argument goes like this. This name isn't just a private belief. It's actually a legally documented fact in court records and, maybe most controversially, on sex offender registry paperwork. The author presents this permanent public record as the seal, the thing that makes a divine name tangible and, in his view, undeniable.
All right, so with that first sign laid out, let's turn to the second, inseparable part of this prophecy, the hidden manna. This is where the claim shifts from something in a public record to something that happened in a private experience.
So what exactly is this hidden manna? Well, according to the author, we're not talking about literal food. It's defined as revelatory knowledge, a kind of spiritual food or sustenance that's received when a person is totally cut off from the world, specifically during a time of exile and rejection. And this timeline is really, really important for context. So, the name is received first. Then, after his incarceration begins in late 2021, the author claims to have written literally thousands of pages of this manna while being completely isolated from society. The timing and the location are central to the argument that this knowledge was truly hid. And the scope of this claimed revelation is just massive. As you can see here, the topics supposedly range from things like physics, reinterpreting E equals mc squared, to a grand synthesis of multiple world mythologies and religions. The author points to these incredibly complex ideas as evidence that this knowledge had to be revealed, not researched, especially since he was incarcerated at the time. Now you know, any claim this extraordinary is obviously going to face a lot of skepticism. And the source material anticipates this. It actually provides direct responses to some of the biggest potential objections. So let's walk through those one by one.
First up, the most obvious objection. The name is just weird. It's too long, it's strange. The author's response leans on biblical history, arguing that ancient names often had these long, descriptive meanings. And then he points right back to the verse itself, saying the name's uniqueness is actually part of the prophecy, since it's known only to the one who receives it. Next is probably the biggest objection of all, that this isn't a revelation, it's a product of mental illness. The defense offered is all about the content of the writings. The author argues that madness creates chaos and fragments ideas, whereas he claims his work is highly structured, consistent, and integrates all these complex fields. He presents that as evidence of a divine order, not a mental disorder.
So what if the prophecy was never even meant to be taken literally in the first place? The counterargument here is that in the Bible, spiritual promises often have very literal, physical fulfillments. The example given is Abram's name literally being changed to Abraham. So the new name is presented as a literal act that carries a deep spiritual meaning.
Okay, this is a really fascinating point in the argument. It's a complete theological reframing. How can a mark of public shame, the Sora registry, possibly be evidence of a divine promise? The response is that God repurposes the world's condemnation. He takes a vessel of shame and turns it into the very white stone mentioned in the prophecy. And the final big objection questions the character of the messenger himself. The defense is that this situation actually fits a recurring pattern in the Bible. The argument is that God consistently chooses flawed, rejected people, think of Joseph or Moses or Paul, to carry out his will. The requirement isn't perfection. It's the act of overcoming. So let's pull all these threads together now. The author's final case really hinges on this idea that the two signs, the name and the manna, don't just exist on their own. They have to work together as a single combined witness. And this slide really distills the entire two-part argument down to its essence. You have step 1, the new name, which is presented as public, tangible, and sealed in law. And then you have step 2, the hidden manna, which is private, spiritual, and received in exile. Together, these two are offered as the complete fulfillment of the prophecy. This quote from the Bible pretty much summarizes the core defense of the entire claim. It's the author's answer to that fundamental "why you?" question. The argument is that choosing someone who is overlooked or even condemned by worldly standards is precisely how the divine demonstrates its power. So we end up right back where we started, but with a new question. We've just walked through the anatomy of a claim that is deeply, deeply personal, but it's supported by both public records and private revelation. And it leaves us to wonder about a much broader question. In these matters of faith and prophecy, where is the line between personal belief and public evidence? What does proof really even look like?